And we're live, brother. How you doing, man?
Hey, pretty good. I'm a little bit tired. I had to bring some coffee in here tonight. Get the go juices going. Kind of like Brendan Marion's offense, man. Kind of tired, but we're gonna make it through here. So we're gonna need some of these chats, comments, a lot of comments tonight, so we can feed the show.
Heck yeah.
But how do you lined up some topics, man? What topics are we gonna talk about tonight?
All right, so let me pull them down real quick. So we got a defensive tackle, Sadear Mitchell out of New Jersey this week, committed to us, 6'5", 335 pounds. We're going to talk a little bit about him. We're going to talk about the fact that every offensive lineman that Texas has in this commit class, minus Stroh, I haven't confirmed with Stroh yet, plays basketball. So you're talking about athletic big men who can move their feet. We're going to talk about the national perception of Texas from other schools. Texas getting a lot of hate out there right now for the way they're able to recruit after a 5-7 season. And then conference realignment. I see it as a big three: the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC. Look at the recruiting rankings when I say that. And the Big 12 has the potential to get to 18 teams. So those are topics that we're interested in talking about. Would like to hear your comments or questions on those topics, but we'll begin with Sadear Mitchell. Again, he's a defensive tackle, 6'5", 335 pounds. Had a chance to ask him some questions down in Twitter space because what I heard was he's a 3-down defensive tackle, meaning that on obvious pass downs, he doesn't come off the field, right? He has the ability to get to the passer and tackle the running back on the way. That's kind of how he described himself. Your thoughts on Sadear Mitchell?
Going back and looking at his film, when you're thinking size like that, you're thinking the mobility is not going to be there, the agility is not going to be there. But if you go look at him, there's a reason why most of these SEC teams wanted Mitchell, and it's because he's a big body in the middle that obviously is going to obviously require a double team, because of the sheer force that which he's going to bring, obviously up the middle when it comes to pressure. And then his ability to be able to run stop. But like you're talking about, a 3-down lineman, and that 3-down lineman really comes back to passing downs and not just creating pressure from the outside, but creating the pocket to get smaller and smaller from the inside out and allowing your rush ends to be able to get to the quarterback. But he's a big dude, man. And like I said, there's a reason that you're going against the national championship Georgia Bulldogs, head to head, to include that team out east in Texas A&M for his services. And it was a big pickup for Bo Davis to be able to go up to the Northeast and be able to pull a kid out of there. I know Kyle Flood's from that area. He spent a lot of time up in that area, but be able to go up to, New Jersey. Now we're looking at not just, be able to pull recruits in state, but now we're looking at, a guy like Shannon that's from out in California, and you're going up East Coast, up to New Jersey. It's kind of spread across the United States at this point when you're talking about recruiting.
Absolutely. So with Sadear, again, why he chose Texas, because he was asked this question in the space that I was in today. Why Texas? And it seemed like him and Samaj Burrell, who was also in the space, have the same idea. They were looking for a big city. They don't want to go to a college town, a smaller college town that doesn't have everything to offer that Texas does. Whether it be the nightlife or the concert scene or whatever it may be that Texas and the city of Austin offers these kids, you can't find that place in these smaller college towns. And they were really enamored by, the steakhouse visit, the lake visit, and all the things that Texas had to offer that probably a lot of these other universities, not picking on Athens, Georgia, but Athens, Georgia is not the same as Austin, Texas, as far as, like I say, the concerts that they're able to get into there. And just the sheer size of the city. They didn't want to go to a small town. They wanted to go to a larger city, and Austin was the pick. And then they asked him about moving out of a northern climate because they noticed that all his offers were from Southern schools, or his final group was from Southern schools. And yeah, he doesn't like the cold. He didn't mind moving down into a southern climate where it's a little warmer. So yeah, great pickup by the Longhorns. Again, a big body that can move. And we talked about this too. We talked about our Pete Kwiatkowski film, the 245, and how with 𝗣𝗢𝗓 and Qualls, like he doesn't he doesn't have to have 240-pound rush ends. He doesn't mind if you can move, putting 335 in the middle and talking about a guy like Finkley at 260 on the end. Like, he doesn't mind big bodies out there. Like you said, it pressures the pocket, it condenses the pocket, puts pressure in the quarterback's face, not necessarily from the peripheral, but in his face, and rushes his throws. And again, you're getting a 3-down back who says, I'm going for the quarterback and I'll tackle the running back as he's going by me. So again, and from what he says, he could play nose tackle, he could play 3. Bo's also told him that he could, experiment with him in the 4-eye. So you can see him lined up all across the defensive line for the University of Texas when he comes.
Yeah, going back to your comment about the big cities too, and where these recruits want to go. I can tell you, there's not a lot of college towns that have Ferrari dealerships as well. You know what I'm saying? So the opportunity with NIL and be able to, if you come in and you're a Bijan Robinson, not just as an athlete, and everybody knows how good Bijan Robinson is, but as a person, and be able to build your brand the way that Bijan's been able to do it, those opportunities, you're going to have a lot more opportunities in the city of Austin than you would a lot of these other smaller college towns, not to throw shots at them, because that's not everybody's piece of pie. You know what I'm saying? That's not what everybody wants. There's some people that, would rather go to Ole Miss and enjoy the game day festivities as a football player. Georgia, I'm assuming, I've never been to the University of Georgia, but I'm pretty sure it's a pretty campus that has, a hell of a game day experience. But that's just not everybody's cup of tea, But like we were talking about, ACL, the list goes on and on and on of the opportunities you would have in the city of Austin as a player when you're not involved in, spring practice, fall practice in the middle of the season. Those things you could do outside of that time, really the sky's the limit.
Absolutely agree. And you're talking about coast to coast, right? Like, Texas doesn't center recruiting now like they used to, like state of Texas kids first and then everybody else. No, I think this recruiting philosophy, and I think it shows by the offers that they give, is coast to coast, from Hawaii up to New Jersey, down to Florida. And again, Steve Sarkisian is from the West Coast, so you're going to find himself in California, coach at Washington. They're going to find themselves all over the map in search for the best football players. And not only the best football players, but the ones that fit their scheme. Like, I think you could tell by Coach Flood's recruiting exactly what he's looking for. I think you could tell by Coach Marion and Steve Sarkisian's offensive, mindset of what kind of receivers they're looking for. It's speed across the football field, except when you get down in the trenches and you're looking for size on both the offensive line and defensive line. But those years of Texas just taking 25 players and 22 being from the state of Texas, and your Jordan Hicks here and your Chris Sims there, where you have one high, caliber athlete that you pulled out of Ohio or Florida. Those days are over. Again, these guys are looking coast to coast for the best football players, and not only the best football players, but the best players that fit their system. Your thoughts? Yeah,
I think I lost my train of thought there, but I'll get it back here in a minute. That's exactly what it is. It's building the Alabama model at Texas. And I don't want to say that, but I'm saying it. Because if you look at a Cedric Baxter and who his comp is, right? And you look at Xavier Worthy and Xavier Worthy and Nair and Brennan Thompson and obviously Hall from Alabama, Jonte Cook. You see what the pieces of the puzzle is building. And Steve Sarkisian has been there before, so he knows what it takes to win at that level and what caliber athlete you need. The same thing with Kyle Flood. He knows what caliber athlete you need on the offensive line to be able to produce and we're just talking specifically about offense right now, to be able to put up the numbers you need to put yourself in a position to win every football game. If your defense doesn't show up for a quarter and a half, can you still score the ball at will? Can you still do that all gas, no brakes? And I think that's what they're doing now, is they're taking those pieces that they've seen at Alabama that worked, and they're taking those pieces and they're bringing that puzzle to Austin. And if that is exactly what they're doing, because if you look at all the comps of each one of these players, you can actually name somebody on that Alabama team, to include the offensive linemen, man, those big ass offensive linemen that he had at Alabama to work with. You know what I'm saying? They were 6'5", 330-pound guards, So I think that's where we're kind of at right now. And I think you can sell that. I hate to use the word sell, but you can use that to your advantage when you're talking to these recruits and say, hey, these are the guys we had at Alabama. These are the pieces we have now. You're another piece of this puzzle. We need you on the 40 acres so that we can replicate or duplicate what we did at our previous stop.
Wholeheartedly agree. Want to go back to, because you talked about offensive linemen, and that's one of the topics I wanted to talk about is their athleticism. But I did want to pull this up. You guys have probably touched on it before. But when should we start worrying about numbers? Seems like we're the nation's hot spot currently, so eventually spots will drop. We're not the only nation's hot spot. Miami's doing a hell of a job right now in recruiting. Notre Dame's doing a hell of a job in recruiting. And Ohio State is doing a hell of a job in recruiting at this current moment. But I think that number is 23 or 24 because I think you're going to get to, and somebody said a little bit lower, Scooter said it below, they're not at that 25 scholarship limitation. But I think the max probably for this class is 28 high schoolers, depending upon what becomes available in the transfer portal. And again, it's just a guess because you don't know what attrition is going to look like coming out of fall. Again, this coaching staff is willing to have those hard conversations with folks after the season, after spring ball, after fall camp to say, hey, I really don't see you cracking the depth chart. I don't see you being a third team safety. If you choose and want to look somewhere else, by all means, do that. I mean, again, after fall is a little bit less than after the season and after spring because, again, they're not going to be able to play this calendar year. But those hard conversations are had. The early signing day kind of changes things because you're probably not going to see much in-season attrition unless folks, like I say, decide to leave after fall ball because they're not cracking the depth chart the way they'd like to. But I think it's 27, 28. So my answer would be when you get down to that 23rd, 24th spot. But I will say historically, what we saw last year in this first class of Steve Sarkisian is, and I'll chronicle it back to a gentleman we had on our show, a young man we had on our show, Champ Lewis. He was the 900th best player in the country. He was out of Louisiana. He was offered a scholarship by Terry Joseph. And as guys who were higher ranked than him started to commit to the class, Brooks out of Little Elm is one that comes to mind. You know, he was a flip from Ohio State to Texas on National Signing Day. You could see something like that happen, but I don't think that stuff starts to happen until you're at 25 scholarships. What do you think?
I think they have to have those hard conversations now. And we talked about this, I think, in the last show. They have to have those hard conversations now. Like if Samu, right, from the Houston area wants to commit now, and I'm not just calling him out, because at one point they put an offer on the table for him. You know what I'm saying? So he had a whole, from that time that they gave him an offer to the time to now, or probably 3 weeks ago, he probably had an opportunity to commit to this class, right? But I think you have to have those hard conversations now because of the phone calls you may be receiving. Hell, we don't know, and I don't think there's anything that goes into silence. Silence really doesn't tell me much because really didn't commit to commit. Does it make sense? Or you may have given a silent, but you're just waiting on a specific date, that means a lot to you to be able to commit. But I think they have to have those hard conversations now and say, hey, man, you're number 3 on my board. I have to wait till this plays out to kind of see where we're at to be able to be able to honor that offer that we gave you. I think you have to. But it's been a long time, and maybe it's because we just haven't been a brand where recruits are just banging down the door and trying to get in. But July, I mean, the end of July into the beginning of July feels like early signing day to me. You know what I'm saying? Without pen to paper. That's what it's felt like over the last, obviously we pay a lot of attention to Twitter, and it feels like every time that somebody, tweets that they've committed to one school or another, you kind of know about it. And I think it's just the fact that that's what we follow. So that's what the most tweets you see. But it feels like, I think between Notre Dame, Texas, and I'm just going to say Ohio State, that's the top 3 on the composite 247 right now. I think Notre Dame has 19 commits or 19 commits.
Yeah.
I think Ohio State has like 16 or 17 commits. And then Texas has we're 18 commits right now. 18 commits right now. There's not a lot of room left in those classes for these offers that you put on the table. So I think those hard conversations are happening right now. I think you're correct. When you get to that 23 number, you really almost have to sew it up and say, hey, we're going after these big whales or big fish, and in hope that you, as those days Under Armour and those other, football games happen and people start making their commits, on National Signing Day. You just got to hope that you're a good closer and that you're able to get that guy that you waited on, so you don't waste that roster spot.
And we did talk about it in our last live. We basically had the 17 commitments that we knew we had, and we basically walked down by position. Quarterbacks, no takes. Running back, 1 take. Wide receivers, 2 takes. We talked about each position, how many folks we thought or kids we thought they were going to take at that position, and we came up with 12. And that's where we came to, at the time, would be 28, 29. But again, I don't know exactly what the big board tells them. But those names are out there: the Hills, the Hicks, the Shelbys, the receivers that are still out on the board, like Hale, the linemen like Hunter Osborne, Braylon Shelby. Those are the names you hear. Mikael Harrison-Pilot's another one. Those are the names you hear. But when you start adding those guys to the class, that's what takes you to that 24, 25 number. How many of those will we get to commit? How many will we eventually sign on December? I don't know, but yeah, we kind of talked about that on the last show. How many we saw at each position would get offers, and what our big board would look like with the remaining scholarships that we would have at our disposal.
I think with most big programs, attrition in the fall, in transfer portal in the fall is not a thing in the fall.
Right.
Because if somebody's transferring in the fall, it's not so much waiting, but is there a reason they're transferring in the fall? You know what I'm saying? And unless you can, obviously increase your production on the football field with someone that's going into the transfer portal in the fall, the chances of you picking up somebody is very slim. And I think attrition is the same way in the fall. I don't think you're going to see a large amount. I don't think you're going to see, at the most, maybe 2-3 people, if that, in the fall, that are going to leave the program. So I think right now recruiting is a guessing game all the way up to National Signing Day, because really when you start worrying about the transfer portal is right after, the national championship is played. Then you start worrying about the transfer portal, or leading up to it. If a kid's not in a college football, obviously a bowl game, and they go into the transfer portal, then you start really worrying about the transfer portal.
Yeah, you're more apt to find medical retirements out of fall than transfers, in my opinion. Somebody comes, they get hurt, medically retire during fall ball, then you will see transfers again, because I think it has to be a certain situation for a kid to walk off a team before the season starts. Mark, I get this. They got rid of the 25-man limit. Yeah, we're tracking. That's why we said 28 or 29. But what you got to remember is that 85 scholarship limit didn't go away. So, yeah, you could fit as many kids as you want in this 23 class, but it still has to fit under that 85 scholarship rule. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. But, again, attrition is going to drive that. Who on this current roster is going to remain? How many out of this 22 class, the first class, the 22 class, find themselves on the 2 deep, pushing guys that have been here for a while out, and then grow that 23 number. Because, again, you're making in-season evaluations, too, on your board. Hey, I thought we were deeper at this position. Now I'm not so sure. Hey, we may need to take another guy here. So all that analysis is probably ongoing, even though your class is currently being built.
Yeah, but again, and I just real fast, I just named 4 people on the defense side of the ball that are not going to be here because they're seniors next year, and that's Cook, Jamison, Overshone, and Coburn. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So you do have a heavy junior. You hope some of these guys that that are juniors play well enough that they have an opportunity to go to the combine and get selected in the NFL draft, something we haven't done or we didn't have last year. So sometimes that attrition is good, because it allows you to be able to, again, pick up guys in the transfer portal, knowing that those seniors don't have any more eligibility left. So you can almost count against those numbers, meaning that, hey, okay, this guy's been here for 6 years. It's time for him to exit stage left. I know that's one number I got. So really, if you want to know what some of the attrition is going to be at the end of the year, go ahead and count the seniors and maybe the eligible, juniors, draft eligible juniors, and try to figure out that number of who may be, draft combine, maybe a T'Vondre Sweat. There's a lot of NFL. If you go read some stuff from last year, there's a lot of NFL teams that are intrigued by T'Vondre Sweat's size and his speed. Is that a guy that can leave? So we'll kind of see. That's where most of your attrition is going to happen next year is based on those seniors that have been around for a long time.
Yeah, I do want to shout out to 𝗟𝗚𝗞𝗘 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗘, linebacker from California. Texas picked up a couple of years ago in recruiting and then medically retired because of a disc issue, neck issue. I'm not sure if it's a disc, but has found doctors that have cleared him to play. He was boxing, and I guess the doctor said, if you could take a punch like you've shown us, then I guess you could play football. So yeah, he's going to Alabama A&M to restart his college football career. So good on to 𝗟𝗚𝗞𝗘 coming out of California. He was in the top 50 players in the country, and we were really, really excited to get him.
Kind of want to go back to Champ real quick, man. I'm not going to root for too many horns. Obviously we're going to be leaving the Big 12. I'm going to be a big Champ fan. You know what I'm saying? I wish the best for Champ. We had him on the show. Believe it or not, his numbers did really good on the show too, man. He was really popular on this show, and I think it's just because of who he was and the opportunity to play at Texas, and then it just didn't work out for him. And I'm glad he landed at another Power 5 school. Wish it had been somebody outside of the Big 12. But yeah, I obviously want to wish Champ, well, and hopefully he has a good career. Just hopefully it's just not, he doesn't play well against Texas when he has that opportunity here in the next year or two.
Yeah, and we talked about this too. We'll get back on our topics, but I like this one too because we talked about 60 to 70%, right? I think the number I said last week was 70, and I was just ballparking it for roster turnover. Again, Clint kind of talked about it earlier. They came from Alabama, know what kind of athletes they wanted, right? And they're going to search from coast to coast to get these kind of athletes, whether it's high school, coming out of high school, or transfer portal. They know what the offensive lineman looks like that made them successful at Alabama. They know what the edge looks like that made them successful at Alabama. So they're going to turn this roster over as fast as they possibly can to fit that out, to look like that team that they're going to face on September 11th. Either September 11th, September 10th. I don't have it right in front of me, but I know it's one of those 2 days that Alabama comes to Austin. As you can tell, I probably don't have tickets, but I don't think I can handle that game day atmosphere as it is. And then, of course, we got to be on after for a post-game show.
Hell, I can't afford the tickets at this point.
Yeah, so. yeah. Not with. I was telling I had an interview. I'm sorry. Yeah, because I was just telling Zach Collins. So I did an interview before this show, and it'll probably come out tomorrow at 5. But I had a chance to sit down with the offensive line trainer that trains DJ Campbell. He trains Andre Kojo and trains Trevor Gooseby. So we talk offensive line for about 30 minutes. But I was telling him it's just like an old offensive lineman, Sam here, tore an ACL 6 months ago, and it looks like he has another ACL tear. And orthopedic vets aren't cheap. So I'm with you there. I got to save some money. And Alabama tickets aren't in that expenditure list.
Hey, I think you wanted to say something here about this. Hey, I think we have 62 people in here now. If you wouldn't mind hitting that like button. If you have not subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. We are trying to come back and put out as much content as we can. Some of these, we're trying to do some tape shows too. In between the days we can't do lives. Obviously, lives is what me and Jeremy love to do. But obviously it's hard to get on here as frequently as we want to. But please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button if you have not done so.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Lindo. We talked about that. Zach Collins, this offensive line guru that I talked to today, had 39 prospects signed last year. And again, he talks about opportunities, right? Like he wants to go anywhere and everywhere he can to help kids. And so I won't talk about that show much longer because, again, it's going to probably air tomorrow evening. And I want him to be able to talk about exactly what he does for himself. But let's shift gears to offensive line and the athletic, right? The athletic offensive lineman that we have. And so had a joke today because found out that Kojo, of course, you guys, if you watch the Trevor Gooseby interview, you know that he plays basketball. Cams Williams plays basketball, and Devon Campbell plays basketball. So came up with a starting 5 with all guys over 300 pounds, and it's pretty formidable. Nobody's getting a rebound against that team, but I say that to say this. Talking about offensive linemen, if you could play basketball and play four-court basketball and defend, and play defense, then you got pretty good feet. So every offensive lineman that Texas has brought in under Kyle Flood seems like, I don't know if 𝗟𝗏 played basketball. Haven't had a chance to ask him that, but all these guys play basketball, saying that not only these guys big bodies, but they're big athletic bodies. We dropped a dunk film in Trevor Goosby's interview. So if you haven't watched Trevor Goosby's interview with us, if you just log in just to see the dunk, the windmill dunk that he does, check that out. But these guys are athletic. And so everybody talks about big humans, but these guys have something more to offer. Again, Devon Campbell can outrun his running back to the goal line on a 40-yard run. We've seen that. Again, these guys can dunk a basketball. So athletic linemen, big linemen, phenomenal group. I think that Kyle Flood's bringing in here. And again, we look at 23 as more a development class. These guys are not your Devon Campbells or Kelvin Banks. They're not finished products. Again, those guys aren't finished products either. They haven't even touched the 40 acres yet, but they're further along in their development. But the guys that we have are good clay, as Zach talked about, to be able to mold and make better. And they're all hungry, and they're all smart, and they're all hungry to get down to Austin.
All right, you hammered that one out, didn't you?
I talked about it for 30 minutes today. So I you know me, I told him this too. I said, me and Clint were raised on and we have some mutual friends, come to find out. The first guy that ever tackled me as a running back in DeSoto Youth Football Association was Wayne Ingram. He ended up being my tight end at DeSoto, but I was number 35 for the Falcons. Wayne was number 18 for the Panthers. And I no sooner got the ball as my first game as a running back. It was horrible. But I no sooner got the ball, and Wayne was putting me on the ground. So we actually have some mutual guys that we know. So yeah, it was a really cool interview, and I really enjoyed doing it. Where are we going
All
next?
Right. We're going next. Let me see here. Let me kind of go scroll through these.
I'll tell you where we're going next while you're looking for something good. Go ahead.
Right. No, it's Kyle Flood coached and watched Evan Neal every day and knew that was what he needed to bring with him to Austin. Again, if there's one coach on the 40 acres now, a couple of them, it work, understanding what you need as a player and their ability to be able to develop these guys. Brennan Marion and Kyle Flood are two people I'm not worried about at this particular point with who they can bring in and development they've had. Obviously with a Blitnikoff winner there at Pitt last year.
That's where it came from. Sadear, the new defensive tackle commit, also plays basketball. So if I could give you my starting five real quick for Texas big man. So I got DJ Campbell starting at point. I have Trevor Goosby as my shooting guard. Sadear Mitchell is my small forward. Andre Kojo is my power forward. And Cam Williams is my center. Nobody's getting a rebound against that group. I promise you.
I don't think they can get around them at all.
No.
Line them up across the midcourt stripe. And there's a good chance they're not going to make it by them at all. What are they going to do? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that'd be pretty funny, man. I think a couple of spaces they've asked, who would win one-on-one. I think what was it, Trevor Goosby and
Goosby against Cam Williams.
Yep. Williams, like who would win a one-on-one. But that to me, it's something to be said that these guys are that athletic, and they're track guys too. Track, basketball, and football. I think Trevor told us in our interview that he had played soccer at one point, right?
He was a soccer player. Did.
Yeah, soccer player. So
he's also a receiver.
Nola Daniels wants to talk about the Bama game. I think he's thrown that up there a couple of times.
Excited. I almost look at it like I do, going to the SEC. We're going to go out there in September, second game of the year, and we're going to get to play a team who's been the perennial power in college football for the last 10 years. I got to see where we match up. I got to know. And again, I think somebody just said, and we put it up there, 55 out of 85 are young, right? So we don't have the experience, I think, in a couple of spots that Alabama's going to have. But if you're looking for a measuring stick, I mean, who better to go against than Alabama? State of the program. You'd wish that, I don't know if you wish that it'd be later in the season so you could develop, or you want them game two in the heat. 100-degree temperatures that big noon kickoff in September is going to give you. But I'm excited to see Quinn Ewers. I assume he's going to be the starting quarterback. That's what I think. Bijan Robinson, Xavier Worthy, these offensive weapons going out there against an Alabama defense. And I'm leaving the offensive line out because I don't know who the first five are going to be, but I do want to watch them compete. Again, they're going to be competing against big bodies like Alabama's on our football team. But just excited to see that game, as excited as I am to go to the SEC.
It's a measuring stick. It's a measuring stick. We had an opportunity to play the SEC team last year in the second game of the year, and it didn't go so well.
Yeah, we did.
At Arkansas. Loud, crazy, ruckus plays. The turnover of the players from that football team to where we sit today is totally different. I think the culture is different. I think it's a measuring stick. I'm not expecting Texas to beat Alabama, but you want to see where we stand as a program, like Jeremy said, playing a team that has been the perennial power for the last 10 years into a conference where you're going to play somewhere probably between 24 and 25. Yep. And I think that's what's important. Is you go in there, you got to go in there and play game one. I think Sark said it best when somebody asked him about it. Like, I'm not sure if they asked him about the Alabama game or they asked him about going to the SEC, and what he said was spot the ball.
That's it.
You spot the ball, and we're going to be ready to play regardless of who the opponent is, where it is, when it is, what time it is. Spot the ball, we're going to play. And I think that's the mentality that we have to have. I think that if anybody knows Alabama, it's going to be Kyle Flood and it's going to be Steve Sarkisian. They know exactly what they're going up against.
Absolutely.
Know what they're going up against in game two. I think the secret weapon is Gary Patterson has been game planning for Alabama probably for the last 6 months. And I think that is going to be his number one priority, is to figure out how do you game plan against Alabama? What games did they lose last year? Right? One happened at Kyle Field, right? Which games did they lose last year, and what did their opponent do to them, right, to give them a shot to win? And I think that's what it comes back down to, is coaching, development, and then obviously when you're playing Alabama, the pendulum has to swing in your favor at some particular point because you're definitely going to need it.
Absolutely. And DJ Dog 31 is exactly right. Bama game is a measuring stick as to where we are and how we compete at the SEC level. We need to be realistic in our expectations. Again, there's no the spread is 14.5 points, and it's 14.5 points for a reason, because people think that Alabama's 2 touchdowns better than Texas, and I don't disagree with them. But like I say, spot the ball. Let's find out. Let's go in there and compete. Let's go in there and with tenacity, and whatever happens at the end of 60 minutes happens, but I like the fact that we challenge ourselves. I like the fact that we go to LSU for a home and home. Now, did we get to go to Baton Rouge? No, COVID ruined that. I like the fact that we'll go to Arkansas. I like the fact that we've been to Ohio State. I like the fact that we've done a home and home with Notre Dame. Like, we could play, FCS teams and pad our schedule if we wanted to, but I think that's what makes Texas Texas, is that spot the ball mentality. Is, hey, we've been around for a long time. Yes, the last decade hasn't been exactly what we wanted it to be, but we're new. Our team is new, and we want to get after it. So, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
And we talked about this, David, last show. But Will Anderson and Dallas Turner may have some influence week 2, and we would be crazy to think that the best defensive player in college football, if not the best football player in college football, in Will Anderson's not going to affect the game somehow. But how do you scheme at, and Jeremy will probably get into this, how do you scheme your offense to minimize the damage that those 2 defensive ends have at Alabama? And Jeremy will tell you, running the ball at them, one, is definitely going to slow them down, because now they got to think about running the ball at them versus teeing off and rushing the quarterback every opportunity they get. And I'll let you
know. The RPO, yeah, no, you're 100% correct. So yeah, run the ball at them, work them. Like put a tight end to their side, put a fullback to their side, chip the hell out of them whenever you can. And the second thing is Quinn Ewers has to recognize what he's looking at when he gets to the line of scrimmage. Steve Sarkisian has to recognize what he's looking at from the sideline on the football field, along with whoever the offensive coordinator is upstairs, and get the ball out of your hands. Like, I watched All Access yesterday, and that's what he's talking about. Understand where your progressions are pre-snap. That way, as you see it develop, you know exactly where to go with the football. Get it out of your hands, because, again, this line was too inconsistent last year for both Hudson Card and Casey Thompson to really be effective. And I'll go up to this comment in a few about finishing games. That somebody is a really good comment about because we couldn't finish last year. We lost games, close games. We lost games because we didn't play complimentary football. But I'll pull it up in a second and tell you what I think the answer is to pulling those games out at the end, not getting caught by Oklahoma, not getting caught by Oklahoma State, not getting caught by Baylor after having leads. But it is, I won't pull it up. If you can find it, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, it is complimentary football. When you go down and score, again, Texas scored 44.5 points in their first 6 games. They were 4-2 in those games. Arkansas, Oklahoma were those losses. Last 6 games, Texas scored 26.5 points per game, right? Doesn't seem too bad, but in that was a 1-5 record, right? So you have to be able to score, in my mind, 35 points a game, somewhere in the middle. And then you have to play complimentary football. When you go down and score, whether it's a one-play drive to Xavier Worthy, who busts a big one, you got to come back and shut them down. When I say shut them down, it's kind of like what they did in the spring game. 3 points for the offense, 4 points for the defense. Bend, don't break, right? Hold them to field goals. Don't allow touchdowns. Don't allow answer-back touchdowns. But I think it's better complimentary football. And the offensive line has got to allow you to run the football. When you have a lead, no Turtle Tom mentality of, hey, we got a 7-point lead. We're gonna sit on the football, but you have to be able to run effectively when they know you're going to run it to be able to, again, establish that RPO game and the play action that's necessary to bust those big plays and widen that lead. You just gotta be better in the trenches.
But that's against every team that we play, not just Alabama. Yeah. That is every team that we played. That is the mentality we need to go in there with. But Lando 7448 is talking about you can only chip one of Will Anderson or Dallas Turner. Hell, 12 personnel and having a runner back chip one of them while you have another defense helping your left tackle is one. Or you run 13 personnel because you have athletic tight ends that they can chip and get out in lanes and catch passes. I'm going to tell you, Steve Sarkisian is going to have a game plan to again minimize. It's not about stopping them altogether. It's like watching, Michael Parsons on Sundays, right? You have to minimize the pain in which they give you, right? You have the best 2 defensive ends in college football on the second Saturday of the season. It's about minimizing what pain they put on your football team. And I'm going to tell you, Steve Sarkisian will have a game plan to help minimize that. Now it comes down to those 11 players on that side of the ball to be able to execute. Steve Sarkisian's plan. That's it.
Right.
That's it.
Whether it's 22 personnel and you have Jaleel Billingsley and Jatavian Sanders out there as your 2 tight ends, and you flex one out to one side and you leave one end to block one of the ends, and then you chip them with Bijan or Roschon. I expect Roschon to get a lot of play as a fullback in this game to do just that, to put bodies on people. But yeah, that's Cody Page. That's why I finished it with line of scrimmage is just because the same way you couldn't run the football in crunch times, you got ran on. Like Arkansas, like you got beat by a 3-man rush and then they ran the ball down your throat. That's SEC football. That's where we need to get to. But yes, that's why the defense, again, 26 points per game, 44 points per, let's just say the first 6, 44.5 points per game should win you at least 5 of those 6 ball games. You went 4-2. The same way. So if the offense had continued to score 44 points, maybe we win more than 1. Maybe we go better than 1-5. But it's all about complimentary football. When your offense is putting up points, and this is just any sport 101. If you're putting up points, you got to stop the other guy. But it has to be at specific times of the football game to maintain momentum.
I get what you're saying, Landos. That's what Saban wants you to do. You think it's cover 2, only sending 4, running a cover 6. Absolutely get it. It puts you in a position when you, but again, Steve Sarkisian, outstanding play caller, will have a plan. It comes down to, Texas executing it against the top team in the country, the best team in the last 10 years. It's one game out of conference that's going to give you a measuring stick of exactly where Texas is going into a game against UTSA, and then followed up by conference play, which Mark Leffler wants to talk about. Conference play. That's what it's about to me. Alabama is a measuring stick. They're coming to Austin. You got an opportunity to play the number 1 team in the country at home at 11 o'clock in the morning in September. It's going to be hot as hell by 12 o'clock in that stadium. 1 o'clock, it's going to be death. By 2 o'clock, people are going to try to figure out how to get out of the sun. But it's one game. It's a measuring stick. Texas has to play the game. Sarkisian says, spot the ball. We're going to play whoever we got to play. And then we move on to conference play, which means everything. You know what I'm saying? The game against Alabama doesn't mean everything. The game, 2 games after that is what means everything. The chances of Texas being 3-0 going into conference play at this particular point is probably 20%, 30%.
That's exactly the number I had, 20%.
Honestly, I give obviously Alabama an 80% chance of winning that football game. But how do you play into conference play? How do you play your Texas Techs? How do you play your Baylors, Oklahoma States, Oaklands, Oklahomas? How do you play Kansas at Kansas this next year? That's what means the most. Now, if you go look at the FPI, the ESPN FPI, I think they just had an update today. They have Texas being 9-3. I can't wait till Phil Steele's book comes out, because it was pretty damn accurate last year. I went back and actually looked at it today, and the things that he talked about in his book, if you're not following Phil Steele, he puts out a magazine every July that covers pretty much every Power 5 school in the country. If you go back and look at it, he kind of nailed exactly what we were going to deal with as a team last year. And I'd like to see what his thoughts are. I think it's in. If you haven't got one yet, I think it's going to hit most Barnes and Nobles by July 8th. I wasn't trying to get him any airtime on here, but I can't wait till that comes out as well.
100%. Yeah, like you said, it all comes down to competing for a Big 12 championship, right? And you hit it right on the head, is that Alabama's an out-of-conference game. In order to get where you want to get, you have to win championships. And again, every recruit in this 23 class is going to be there. Everyone you talk to says, and you ask, what game are you going to? It's always Alabama. You got to show that you could compete with Alabama. But is it the be-all, end-all to the season? Absolutely not. You got to, even if you win, you still got to refocus, play a conference season. If you lose, you still got to refocus and play a conference season. You still got to spot the ball, as you say, and as Sarkisian saying. Can't wait till it's played. But again, it matters no more or a little bit less than any conference game that you're going to play, because it doesn't lead you to a conference championship. But hell of a game. I want to see it.
As exciting as I am about recruiting, I'm going to try to, as we move into, out of summer into really fall camp, I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible, objective as possible. Yeah. As possible when it comes to putting the burnt orange glasses on, because every year we start off, we're going to be 10-2 or 9-3 or so on and so forth. It comes back to burning. So right now I can tell you I have Texas flipping it by 3 games. So I have this right now. If you were to ask me, I think we're 8-4, which is pretty damn good improvement. You'll do better than that. You have an opportunity to win the Big 12 and then go to a New Year's Six Bowl. That would be the sky. But right now, I'm honestly going to try to keep those burnt orange glasses off with a new quarterback. That's the other thing you got to worry about, too. You got one quarterback that started the first game last year and they got benched for Casey Thompson. You have another one that hasn't thrown a football in a real-life game outside of the spring game since his junior year in high school. So, again, there's offensive woes. Who's going to start? You're going to have 2 true freshmen start. You're going to have 1 true freshman start. You're going to have the line back from last year. So there's a lot of pieces of that pie that still have to be answered. So right now, burn orange glasses off, not drinking the Kool-Aid. Love the Kool-Aid with the recruiting. I'll drink some of that Kool-Aid and then put it down, because when it comes to the season, we have to show marked improvement for these guys that are just committed to want to, sign that dotted line when it comes December into February. That's what means the most right now.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. This is really Stephen Nagati's line from Fanatic Perspective, but we appreciate it. Clicking the like button is his attendance record. Please do that. but at the same time, give us a horns up and let us know where you're listening from or watching from. We like to get the pulse of where everybody's at and where they're watching from. That just lets us know that you're here and support the channel and support the Longhorns mostly.
Yeah. So Lando 7448 again. I got a lot of his stuff pulled up tonight for some reason. I guess I'm just honed in on his stuff. The conference is going to be like 2008, dog eat dog, and I think that's exactly what you're going to get this year. Because I don't think, obviously, Baylor won the Big 12 last year. Oklahoma's got a new quarterback. They got a new freaking offense and defensive coordinator. Oklahoma State's going to be Oklahoma State that they are every year. They're going to win games. They're going to lose games. They're going to be consistently at the top in the top three of probably the Big 12 standings. TCU, new offensive defensive coordinator, head coach. The list goes on and on and on. And I think the Big 12 is open for you to be able to win it this year. But again, you have to show up for 4 quarters of every game. You can't show up in the second half. You can't show up in the first quarter of an Xavier Worthy, in the Red River rivalry, and Xavier Worthy goes for freaking 80 yards, 75, 80 yards on the first play, and then all of a sudden you get up by like damn 20-something points, and then all of a sudden you fold, and then you let them come back, and then they beat you. It has to be consistent for 4 quarters for this team to be able to accomplish their goals this year.
And I think I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's going to be an up for grabs, like you said. Got Dylan Gabriel coming in, quarterback in Oklahoma, and then everybody else, right? Because they're the defending champions. They win it a lot. Baylor's going to be somebody to contend with. But yeah, it's going to be one of those seasons like it was last year. Like every game is close, right? That's every game was within 10 points. And again, we blew leads in most of the games, conference games, against the tougher opponents like Oklahoma State, and Baylor. We just need to get up, like you said, play concentrated football and put these games away, and just play the Big 12 schedule one game at a time and see where it takes you. But yeah, I don't think there's a runaway winner. I don't think there's a runaway favorite inside the Big 12 this year. Absolutely not. We got
the damn Big Ten in here tonight. We got Mr. Muhammad here from Columbus, Ohio. We got a Jesus Elizondo from Lansing, Michigan. Yep. Anybody else from the Big Ten in here tonight? Go ahead and I say Big Ten country, man. Horns and Big Ten country. Got guys from Virginia there.
Where is Big Ten country?
That you're right. Where is Big Ten country? Which I think this is the last topic we're going to talk about tonight, right? And we got 13 minutes on the clock.
Conference realignment.
Yeah. What is the Big Ten?
The rationale behind the thumbnail, right, was like 3 mega conferences: the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC. Because when I look at the conferences, I look at the top tier. In the ACC, of course, you're going to have Miami, you're going to have Clemson, you're going to have Florida State. In the SEC, I don't even have to name those teams for you. In the Big Ten, you got Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC. So, again, I know the Big 12 is talking about bringing in 6 teams that are left from the Pac-12, along with those other teams they looked to bring in last year when Oklahoma and Texas left the conference. An 18-team league. So essentially it's going to come down to ACC, SEC, Big Ten, and then everything is pretty much a Conference USA. When I say Conference USA and Mountain West, I'm talking about from the Northwest to the Southeast. There is no really geographical consideration when it comes to these conferences now, and I think it's going to be absolute chaos. Somebody said in the Big Ten, you can't drive in less than 24 hours from Los Angeles, California, to any Big Ten site other than Lincoln, Nebraska. Everything else, if you're carpooling, it's going to take a couple of days. So again, but if the priority is getting games in every time zone, mission accomplished. I just don't know what it does for the landscape of college football when I consider what used to be a Power 5, now a Power 3, but what's the leftovers I'm going to call the Big 12. Because that's what it's made up of, is the conferences, those 3 conferences, what they didn't want to take is the Big 12.
I think the Big 12 if you get an Arizona State, Colorado, and a University of Utah, right, and possibly a Washington and Oregon, you can almost look at the Big 12 is the fourth. Are they going to be in the same level as an SEC and a Big Ten? I think those two, even the ACC is not going to be able to mirror the SEC and the Big Ten. You know what I'm saying? As far as
it's
but
depth.
It is depth. It's depth of a conference because you walk into we're not even in the SEC West yet, right? We're not even in the SEC, right? But if you look at the SEC West, right now as it sits today, it is a who's who of getting your ass handed to you every Saturday by one of those teams. So from top to bottom, absolutely not. But if you're adding teams, because to me, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah is not a far drive, nor is it a long distance from, Lubbock, Waco, or any of those other places. You know what I'm saying? So geographically speaking, now if Washington and Oregon were to join the Big 12, I think first and foremost, I think Cal and Stanford are probably the next two to say, hey, you know what, Big 10, can you pick us up? Mm-hmm. Academically, and they fit into the Big 10 realm. They do, right? And we were talking about, football, they don't really bring anything from the football side, but Stanford is second in the Directors' Cup every year because they're good at other sports. That makes sense? And Stanford's got a good volleyball team. So I think their next move is to move to the Big 10, which is going to make it even larger. Does the SEC pick up any other teams?
So the battle is Nike in Seattle versus the Bay Area. That's the conversation. Do we want Nike, Oregon, Seattle? Is that a better media market? Because Oregon can't really offer you that much as far as media, but Seattle and Phil Knight can offer you a lot to a conference versus the Bay Area. And I would have to say, if I was a conference commissioner, that I would take Seattle and Phil Knight over the Bay Area. I just don't know that Stanford, again, like you say, the Directors' Cup, when you're talking about the totality of athletic departments, I agree. But if you're talking football, then give me Seattle and give me Phil Knight, because Oregon is consistently going to compete. Again, they lost their head coach, Mario Cristobal, because they were doing very well, and now he's doing the same thing at Miami. You see his recruiting class. I think you get more bang for your buck, whatever conference decides to pick up Oregon, if they're a package deal, Oregon and Washington over the Bay Area, in my opinion.
How many conferences we wind up with? 3 years from now, we got 4 conferences, and everybody else is kind of playing. Playing everybody else.
In the leftovers. Yeah, I think you got a power 3. And again, they're going to give that conference champion to the Big 12. Like, they're going to get a seat at the table, I would anticipate, in a playoff, especially if they, make it 8 teams.
You have to expand it.
Yeah, I think you have to expand it. And Kyle Umlong, shout out to him, kind of got me thinking about this when he built a bracket for what would it look like if you had those 4 power conferences. And that's why I say when I started looking at the top tier of teams, like the first 5 teams, that's when I said the Big 12 really can't hold a candle to the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 10. As far as, like I say, the depth of the conference, maybe if we're looking at multiple sports, but if we're talking just football and the power players in each conference, the SEC is probably 1 for me. The Big 10 is probably 2. And then the ACC would be 3, and then the Big 12 would be substantially lower.
I can see that, man. I can tell you the Big Ten with, again, you're talking about UCLA has not been a really good program for the last, kind of like Texas. You know what I'm saying? UCLA will show up every once in a while. USC was probably, what was the candle holder in that relationship moving to the Big Ten. But UCLA, just like Oklahoma, couldn't have moved to the SEC without Texas, vice versa. That makes sense. Texas can't move to SEC, without Oklahoma. So they were going to go with each other. But if you're talking top to bottom, if this is the other one, is where does Notre Dame go? They have a seat at the table already in the ACC in basketball, right? Is that correct? ACC, and they played with the ACC during the COVID year. But now they have an opportunity to go to the Big Ten. If Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten, to me, Big Ten from top to bottom with blue blood programs, I'm talking about blue blood programs. The Big Ten at that particular point has the most blue blood programs in the country, regardless of what their status has been for the last 15, 20 years. Example, Nebraska.
Not going to argue with you. Yeah, I'm not going to, but the SEC, yeah, we'll probably challenge you. Georgia, Florida, Tennessee. If you count blue bloods, like I wouldn't necessarily call Tennessee a blue blood the same way I probably wouldn't call, like, I don't know who you're classifying as blue bloods in the Big Ten other than Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State,
Nebraska.
Iowa, no.
Nebraska.
Wisconsin,
I'm talking about with Notre Dame there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I think Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Oklahoma. I think with the newfound SEC, I think you got more. I do, and you're more powerful. You just are from top to bottom for that conference. But it's going to be interesting. These are like National Football League conferences now. You got the AFC and NFC pretty much, but we're calling it 4 different leagues essentially. It's going to be interesting. Like you said, I think they have to expand the playoff. They have to expand it to 8 teams. There's no way in heck that you can have 20 team conferences and not select each one of those champions to play in your football playoff.
So my question is, do you add an extra conference game, or do you add one of those other big time group or Power 3 conference games into your schedule and rotate them like you would in the National Football League?
I haven't looked at it enough to answer it in totality. But when you're talking about that large of a conference, I think you may even go to one non-conference game and then and probably a geographical rival that you probably left from the other conferences when you all decided that you were going to move back and forth. And then you go strictly conference games from then on out, especially if you have a conference championship game. I think it's possibly 2. I don't think you're going to do the more like Texas's schedule, 3 out of conference and 9 conference games. I think you gotta have 1 to 2 out of conference games, and you immediately slide into conference season.
So, Mr. Muhammad here, Rob Muhammad, whoever gets Oregon, will they take Oregon State? I kind of look at that as synonymous to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. I think they're if Oregon has an opportunity to go, if Oregon has an opportunity to go to another bigger conference, I don't think they're worried about. Oregon State.
The Beavers.
And what they call is that called that's called the Civil War. Civil War, right?
Yeah.
Civil War may be played once a year, but they're going to play it in 2 different conferences. Just like Oklahoma is probably going to keep Oklahoma State on their schedule, you would think. When it's all just like Texas is, I think the idea is that Texas was going to play Texas Tech as an out of conference, game every year if they went to the SEC. I just don't think Oregon takes Oregon State because it's not necessary. It's not necessary. Now, Oklahoma State puts out a pretty good program every year. So I would actually say Oklahoma State has a pretty good chance of at some point going to another conference. It depending on what happens to the Big 12, because the Big 12 may say, you know what, boom, they dissolve, and half of them go to the Pac-12, and then half of them go to the Mountain West. Colorado's in a bad situation because Colorado divorced the Big 12, and they'd be heading back to the Big 12.
Yeah, and them and Missouri. I saw something about Missouri might join the Big 12. There's no telling, man. I wouldn't do that if I was Missouri. I'd definitely stay in the SEC, and it's probably a joke or something that I read that wasn't serious. But, yeah. And then the last topic we really had is we're nearing that hour mark, and we really appreciate you guys coming in. I will plug a couple of videos. If you haven't seen them, probably the 71 folks that are currently in here have seen these 2. But if you haven't seen the offensive line commit Trevor Gooseby interview, please go check that out. That was the last one. And if you haven't seen our interview with Derek Johnson, UT Hall of Honor recipient, 13-year NFL pro for the Kansas City Chiefs and 4-time Pro Bowler, please go check that out. Pretty much the title is Why Texas? Because we talked about a couple of different things, but we basically wanted him to sell recruits on why Texas? And I don't think he has to do any selling at the current state of the recruiting for this 23 class.
Hand sweating, and it felt like somebody had thrown flour in my mouth when Derek Johnson came on the screen with us during that video. You know, Jeremy had a conversation with him, about a damn 30-minute conversation with him on the phone before he actually came on, man. But that was definitely fun. It was enjoyable. I can tell you, he's a very humble individual, and hopefully we can get Derek back on the show during football season. And I think he's up to it. Get him on the show during football season, and kind of, you know, hopefully it's going well, and he can tell us, you know, what the defense looks like, what the defense needs to work on. Obviously, he's a defensive guy, but really, really, really cool interview. To just, you know, got a DM on Twitter, and Jeremy ran with a DM, and all of a sudden he's got Derek Johnson's telephone number, and they're having a conversation, and then he's on the show with us, which it's just crazy how the growth of the program has changed from our first video, I don't know, 2 years ago about this time. Is that correct? Yep. To where we sit today, you know, having a Hall of Honor recipient on the show. You know, it shows you the growth of the channel, and it wouldn't be possible without everyone that sits here, you know, and hangs out with us during these lives and then watches our videos. So we definitely appreciate each and every one of you. I like seeing where you're from. So, and I'll throw those up on the actual chat here. But before we exit tonight, I would just like to kind of know where everybody's, you know, obviously watching us from. I think it's really cool. Kind of put those up there because it means a lot that we're, you know, getting people from just outside the state of Texas. I know there's Longhorn fans everywhere, but I think it's still pretty cool. Yeah.
So Texas is getting a lot of hate out there from other fan bases. Can't understand why with a 5-7 season in a coach's second year with zero momentum, how they're able to pull what's going to be probably no doubt about it in my mind. If chips fall where we think they're gonna fall, probably a top 5 class, possibly a top 3 class. So yeah, there's a lot of hate out there. I find it very interesting. I think from the national perception is that Texas is definitely on their way back. I used the wrong word. Definitely creeping and gaining momentum to be a better product on the football field, and we're excited about it. Again, I think we're right at 60 days, a little less than 60 days from the season starting, and we couldn't be more excited. Again, do have another video coming out probably tomorrow evening with the offensive line specialist trainer for DJ Campbell, Andre Kojo, and Trevor Coosby, Zach Collins on. Got a chance to interview him today. Please check that out as well. It was a very, very cool interview. He's very energetic, and yeah, we both talk and get after it on talking about guys in the trenches, something that I really like to do.
So, all right, I think that's it. You know, Clint's got to go do homework. Jeremy's off to do what he's going to do. I think he's going to go to Whataburger and eat. But we appreciate you joining us on this Tuesday night. Again, we're going to try to make this a weekly thing. It's not a bi-weekly thing. Just kind of going with what our schedule gives us. So we may fluctuate days. So please put those notifications on. Hit that bell so you know when we're coming on. No. Can we get another quick crystal ball, Clint, crystal ball? If I remember correctly, the last one was Jonte. So 1 for 1 on 5-star crystal balls. Might be the next Fong. I highly doubt it. I'm just going with what the insiders say. And if there's smoke, there's fire. I'm going to go with next one. I'm gonna do MHP, man. I think 𝗟𝗚𝗞𝗘 is on the clock. He was wearing burnt orange shirt today, a Longhorn shirt, in a live on Instagram with Samaje and Sadear. So I'm going to say MHP is the next one. But I'm just going by where there's smoke, there's fire. I don't have any inside information on that. But
can I play?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to stay in the Central Texas region. I'm going to take number 4, Darian Gillette. That's my guy. Hopefully we get a crystal ball, or a crystal ball from me turns into a commitment from him, because I'm sure pushing it really, really hard. Not as hard as the other guys in the 23 class, but I'm pushing that one pretty hard. We need that speed off the edge. Give me that 6'4", 240-pounder from Marlin. But yeah, I can't. That's it for me.
We're not doing big dogs yet. Nope. The time is not not yet.
I thought you were gonna push Hill or Hicks, and I'm like,
no, absolutely not. Nope, not yet. So we're going to keep it reasonable on who we think should get a crystal ball at this particular point. All right, that's it. So again, hit that notification bell, hit that like button. If you have not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. You can find us on Facebook at Texas Football Talk, on Instagram at Texas Football Talk. But I can tell you most of our time, I would say 90% of our social media time, this has been on Twitter at TX Football Talk. So if you want to hit us in the DMs, we may start doing maybe some questions before the show. We'll do a show, and then, hey, you know what? We'll put it on Twitter and say, hey, hit us with some DMs, hit us some questions, and then we already have some questions that are lined up as we wait for the comments to kind of roll into these lives. But we appreciate y'all listening to us, and as always, y'all have a wonderful night and hook 'em.
Hook 'em.